Hey guys, Palstron here. And today let's talk about logbooks. So over on my stream on twitch.tv/Palstron, I'm online 6 out of 7 times a week. We've been doing quite a lot of logbooks in the last few days to get some currency going into the league. I kind of had a slow start, so would be nice to get some fancy items for some upcoming builds, right? And basically, there's a lot of common questions that a lot of people have, and I wanted to kind of make a video about logbooks in general to compile frequently asked questions, to actually show you a map and how I do it, what I think about, because obviously on stream everything goes fast, but I'll show you a little bit of the behind the scenes or whatever. So let's get into it. So first up, when we look at the logbook, there is a few things here that you have to understand. So let's go from top to bottom here. First up, the area level is 83. Now, logbooks do have weighting, so the higher the item level is, the more artifact rewards you will get, and the higher item level your items will be, and the better rewards you will get from the chests. After that, we have, for example, here is Karui Wargraves, which is one of the layouts. You can see that there's also Forest Runes and Battleground Graves, and those are basically the layouts that you will be in during the logbook. And these layouts are highly important because basically, depending on your layout, you might be more spread out, which is usually very, very bad, because you want to get as much reward as possible within your explosion radius. If it's more cramped together, it's better. So here I basically would say I will give you my search, for example, the search that I had to buy my logbooks down in the description, so you can look what kind of areas I prefer. But other than that, let's talk about the factions. Now, there's 4 different factions, and they each have their own artifacts. For example, if you get to your expedition locker here, which, by the way, you get by going to decorations, and if you type in expedition locker, it should be right here, and you can just put it wherever you want in your hideout. But basically, they're tied to 4 of the expedition NPCs. Now, these 4 factions are, number 1, Order of the Chalice. This is the one you see down here with Battleground Graves. This is basically Rock right here. He is kind of a trader that gives you crafting options. If you click on here, you can buy, and then you can modify your item, whatever. I'm just going to click through here real quick. And yeah, you can make items. It's pretty cute. Overall, if you don't know what you're doing, Rock is going to be very mediocre. But yeah, he's Order of the Chalice. So for example, if we now did Battleground Graves, that would mean that all the artifacts that drop in Battleground Graves will be artifacts that relate to him. And these ones over here, lesser order, common order, whatever. Same is true for the other factions. For example, if we look here, the first kind of layout that we could choose would be Karui Wargraves, and this is Knights of the Sun, which belongs to DANNIG. And he is another NPC here, and you can exchange items with him. So, for example, he will give you conversion rates, so you can basically convert his currency into whatever you want, and you can also buy reroll currency from him. And sometimes he can even sell you logbooks. For example, these logbooks are all gambled from him, but do note that they're very rare, and yeah, they're not really sustainable or anything like that. It's just an extra bonus that you get. And next up, the third faction, if we look at Forest Ruins, for example, we can see Black Scythe Mercenaries. Now, this is the faction of TUJEN, and with him, you can haggle for currency. For example, I can do this, right? I can haggle with him. Sometimes if I go too low, right, he's going to say, nah, I don't want that, and then you can haggle with him however you want. He can give you Exalts, he can give you Chaos, he can give you a lot of stack decks. The stack decks you saw in the intro, or most of them are from him. It's actually nuts. So if you know what you're doing with this guy, which we're going to go over in the last section of the video, you can make some good monies out of logbooks. And yeah, he's basically the currency vendor, and all the artifacts relating to him you will find in Black Scythe Mercenary layouts. And last but not least, she's not on this map. She's, for example, on this map, Druids of the Broken Circle. You can see that here. This faction belongs to GWENNEN. And GWENNEN is an interesting one because you can basically buy items from her, and those items can get unique. They can be corrupted. They can be influenced. They can be whatever. And a lot of people use these to gamble their Headhunter or their Mageblood. It doesn't really ever happen. Like, it only happens on highlight reels, to be fair. I've spent quite a few exalts trying to get anything from her. I kind of stopped myself now. I'm kind of like at the point where I say whatever. But yeah, if you want to go for the big ticket items, she's definitely the way to go. I will just warn you in advance that you're probably not going to hit anything off of her. But more on that in the later section of the video. So if we go to our expedition locker, you can see all the different currencies related to the NPCs that I just told you about. Lesser Broken Circle. This is basically Rock's currency. This is TUJEN's currency. this is GWENNEN's currency, and this is DANNIG's currency. And down here you can also see reroll currency. Reroll currency is basically just used to reroll the inventory for whatever NPC you have here. For example, if I push this button down here, I will expend 1 exotic coinage, and I can reroll this whole inventory, and new stuff is going to pop up that I can then buy. So now you learned that the artifact rewards right here are actually tied to specific vendors that you can use. So obviously what follows with that is that you want to pick wisely which layout you actually do, and it doesn't only depend on how good the layout itself is. It's also about what kind of currency it is connected with, and that is completely random. That depends on the logbook. It's not like always career wargraves will be Knights of the Sun. It's completely random. It could also be career wargraves with like Black 7 mercenaries. So depending on that, you will pick and choose which of the 3 you actually want to do. But basically what I can tell you is which vendors are more worth on average than others. Once again, more details on the vendors at the end of the video, but hands down, the best faction is Knights of the Sun, and this is DANNIG's faction. And number 2 will be TUJEN. He's just really good returns as well. So that is Black Scythe. So those are the top 2 dogs here. Number 1, Knights of the Sun. Number 2, Black Scythe mercenaries. And then number 3, depending on how risk averse you are, basically the Druids of the Broken Circle, right, which is GWENNEN. And number 4, which I don't even do, is ROG. So basically, this is pretty good for solo self-found, right? It's also really good in like week 1 when nobody really has gear. You can just craft random gear here. It doesn't really hold up in endgame. Now, I will say this here, there is certain weird strategies with ROG that I am not really willing to do. I'm not really having a lot of fun with him, but if you want to dig a little deeper, I'm sure you can find something on YouTube. I usually just skip his layouts completely. That's why it's nice, right? You can always pick and choose. There's more than one layout you can do. I never really do him. So yeah, I will just put that here. But yeah, number 1, DANNIG, Knights of the Sun. Number 2, Black 7 Mercenary, TUJEN. Number 3, GWENNEN. Number 4, ROG. All right, so now I told you about layouts. I told you about the different factions. So now we can just start the logbook, right? Well, wrong. So here's one thing that a lot of people don't do, which is splitting your logbook. Now, splitting refers to the phenomal-plagued arachnid beast, and I'll show you how to do it real quick. Now, splitting basically just means dividing mods. So on a rare item, for example, that would mean that you have 3 stats, and you get now 2 bases. One has 1 stat, and one has 2 stats, and it's just kind of split in 2, right? For logbooks, the only thing it really means is you get 2 instead of 1 logbook. They're both perfectly usable, so it's basically the same. The only thing that will happen is it will have the split tag, so you can't just infinitely split it over and over. Now, the reason I'm saying this is because these are usually a lot cheaper than just buying another logbook. You can also buy these in bulk, and then you don't have to whisper as many people. So overall, it's a time saver. It's really, really nice. So it depends, right? So there are certain logbooks that might not be worth it. For example, if you do not have either Knights of the Sun or Black 7 Mercenaries, I would probably not split. But if it has those 2 and at least a okay layout, actually, even if it's a shit layout, it depends on the prices, right? You should probably split it. Now, I will put a caveat here. Check the prices of these. Usually it's worth it. Right now, it's like 20C or even 25C cheaper to actually buy a split beast than buy another Knights of the Sun logbook, for example, right? So that's just something I want to tell you. And one more thing is that you actually want to roll your implicits before you split. So as you can see here, each and every layout has certain implicits tied to them. So for example, the Karui Wargraves layout with Knights of the Sun faction currency has increased number of explosives, increased explosive placement range, and a percentage chance that the area contains increased number of monster markers. Now, here's the thing, right? If you press Alt, right, you can see the ranges. I probably would leave the roll as is, but just to showcase, right, if you roll here, you can actually reroll the values of all of them. We're going to go for Knights of the Sun. I already know that, so we're just going to adjust it here, and you just go for something that's good. I'm just going to roll a little bit more. Maybe we get something better. Now, let's just stick with this, right? Now, this is definitely worth it. I'm just going to point this out. Some of these implicits are obviously better than others. For example, you can have a, in the forest runes down here, you see area contains an additional underground area, which we'll talk about in the, when we do the logbook, right? But basically, there's better stuff, there's worse stuff. Stuff like increased number of explosives is huge. you have 20 base explosives in a logbook map, meaning that, for example, increased number of explosives can get you up to 28 explosives. It's one of the better ones. Increased placement range basically gives you more range wherever you can place your explosive. Once again, more on that later. But basically, there's different implicits. Some are better, some are worse. They also play into your decision which one you want to do. So as you can see, there's a lot of small knowledge. It really depends from logbook to logbook. The better you are at this, it's kind of like heisting, right? Or delve. The better you are at this, the more currency you will make. And once again, the reason we want to blessed or before splitting is that after splitting, the logbook will have exactly the same implicits. The split one, that is. So that means that otherwise you would have to bless twice. That's all there is to it. And now we just press the beast in. We go to the blood altar. We type in split, for example, right? And as you can see here, this is the Phenomenal Plague Arachnid that we just bought with half the mods. You put in your logbook. Now, obviously, be smarter than me. These items actually have to be rare to be split. So you just throw an alch on before you split them. You put it in, do it again, boom. You also have to have the yellow beasts. So I think for most people, that's not going to be a problem. But if you craft a ton, you might be out of yellow beasts. So just chuck on some maps and do some yellow beasts. And as you can see here, this is now the split version of the map. Very down there, you can see split tag is now here. And both of these now have the split tag. So yeah, now you have two of exactly the same logbook. So now that we've split them, we also want to roll them. Logbooks have quantity just like a map. You cannot chisel them, but you can alch them and reroll them for more quantity, and they will have different mods. So for example, let's just try it out here. So if I throw on the Orb of Alchemy here, you can see all the map mods that a map you would usually have, and on top you see item quantity, item rarity, monster pack size, and basically you can treat this like a map. Now here's the thing, number one thing, that when we're inside a logbook, I will show you the remnants. You might already know what remnants are, but basically they make the logbook harder, meaning that the harder the logbook is at the start already, the less of those remnants you might be able to take, and then you will get less rewards. So make sure that you can actually run the map comfortably and not just somehow, because otherwise you cannot make your map harder within the logbook. So for example, for me personally, on any character, minus max resistance is an absolute no-go. If you're not capped on LE weakness, absolute no-go. No region for some characters, absolute no-go, but you know the drill, and we can actually do the map just as it is right here. So the way you do that is you click on DANNIG and you do show expedition map. You pop in your logbook right here, and then we basically went for the Karui Wargraves. You can see this is the Knights of the Sun emblem, the one that you see on the logbook as well. So we click on it and basically we do open portals, and now this will open the map for us. Now once you jump into the map, you will see something like this here. You will start at the detonator. Now basically you have down here you have explosives. Now these start with 20 explosives. We have an implicit that gives us increased explosives, so we go up to 24 actually. And now this looks a little bit intimidating, right? It's like, you can think about it like a blight map or whatever. You have to put up your towers, but here you kind of have to now place your explosives. Now there's a lot of icons on the minimap that might confuse you, so I want to go over all of them to kind of demystify them a little bit, right? So the most of the markers are going to be these swirly blue things right here, and these are remnants. Now what remnants are basically global buffs for your logbook. And the thing about remnants is that they only get activated once they are exploded. What that means is, for example, we're not going to start this here, but what that means is, for example, if I place my explosives here and then here, that means that all the mobs that are exploded from here do not get whatever bonus you get from this remnant here. Only after you exploded it and on the explosion itself, the mobs actually get that. For example, runic monsters have a 50% chance to drop an additional rare weapon. No moon runic monsters here would have that chance, but after this explosion and on this explosion, all runic monsters have this upside, and also all the mobs will have this downside up here. So strategically, what that also means is that the earlier you get good remnants, the more payoff they have, because obviously following that, you get all the bonuses. If you pick them at the end, there's like only a few explosions left. They don't really do much, but onto strategy later, right? First up here, a remnant always has a downside and a upside. Now, sometimes we'll just call it prefix and suffix, right? The blue one is the prefix, the white one is the suffix, because sometimes the prefix can actually be an upside. For example, there is more rare monsters, more like stuff like that, more magic monsters, and there is also a big one, which is runic monsters are duplicated. But basically, the prefixes will always be something detrimental, and they can be really, really rough. For example, hits against monsters cannot be critical strikes is super rough for some builds, and then you have the upside. Now, I want to mention here that obviously a big mistake that a lot of beginners make is they think, oh, this looks shiny, let's take all of them, right? By no means you should take all of them. Actually, right now, after they nerfed the remnants from last league, I take very little remnants. You should not take too many of these, because I don't care how good your build is, you will brick if you take too many of them. It is going to happen, I can assure you. And on that note, I also want to point out here real quick that there is super detrimental remnants. For example, the ones in yellow here, monsters are immune to cold damage. Now, this, you can have this for fire, for chaos, for whatever, physical, right? So you actually have to read these before you take them, otherwise you could brick your whole run. Just want to point that out. Obviously, for some builds, also the thing up here with hits cannot critical strike is also detrimental, but yeah, there's also remnants that can completely delete your whole damage type. Now, secondly, and these are not on your minimap, are runic monsters. These are these skulls basically here. Now, do not get distracted by these small ones. These small ones don't really matter. They're just extra pack size. Runic monsters are where it's at. Not only do have a lot of the remnants have modifiers to what these can drop. These are also the ones that can drop reroll currency, which are very expensive right now. For example, TUJEN reroll is 6C a pop. DANNIG rerolls are 7C a pop, and they can drop in stacks up to 4, right? And they also drop you the other currency, the smaller currency, right? So runic monsters in general are just really, really crucial overall, and they are not on the minimap. So whenever you see them, pick them. These are actually way more important to take than most of the remnants, right? And you should usually also, depending on what kind of remnant you have, maybe even pick them over chests. Now, chests are actually on the minimap here. You can see the signs here. For example, this is the currency sign you're used to from, for example, other league mechanics, right? This is unique. This is like blueprint. This is essence. This is just rare jewelry, which is really whatever, right? This is gems. And then there's also these kind of blue chests here, and these kind of blue chests you won't have seen this before, but this is basically currency chests, and that is the basically the logbook currency of whatever faction you're in right now. Now, in terms of which rewards are better, it's basically very similar to other league mechanics. You already know the drill. Maps are good. Rare stuff is not that good. Gems or whatever. Now, one new thing is blueprints actually here. These are actually really, really good. You should try to pick up all of these on your map. Usually, these can give you blueprints. These can give you rogue markers. These can give you contracts. A chest is usually worth like 10 to 15C, sometimes even 30 if you hit a blueprint, right? So these are usually very, very worthwhile if you know how to sell contracts and blueprints. What I will say in terms of rewards is currency is actually really good. Now, not really, really good, but better than in other league. For example, if you open like a Legion and you see the currency thing, you know it's probably going to be like some fusings or whatever. It's not going to be that big of a deal, but you can actually drop exalted shards quite frequently from these. So I would say definitely go for these as well. Now, there's some more weird icons here that I will explain real quickly. You can see this kind of glimmering thing on the minimap down here. Now, this is a underground area. So we'll show you real quick. I will path here just so we can have a glance here. But basically, it's down here, yeah. So if I hover over this, it becomes like green. And this means that it's going to pop open a underground area. And what an underground area basically is most of the time is straight up just you get like 2 to, I think, 6 chests, depending on what kind of underground area you get. Some more runic monsters are down there as well. So every remnant that affects runic monsters also affects every runic monster down there. So it's basically just very, very important that you break these open. Now, sometimes you can, sometimes it's on a weird part of the map, over that in the strategy section, but usually you should pop these open. They're very important. And then we also have a interesting little marker here, which I actually got lucky. And this is a boss. Now, every logbook has a distinct boss, and they all have this icon on the minimap here. And once you explode it, you can see that it opens just like an underground area wood. And basically, this is going to be a boss fight. I'm going to show it later. But yeah, so one more thing I want to show is... oh yeah, and also I should mention that the bosses drop a lot of reroll currency. So they can drop like, I don't know, from 8, depending on your remnants, right? They can drop from 8 to like 20 reroll currencies, which can straight up be like over 100 C worth, right, alone. So it doesn't even matter what kind of uniques they drop or whatever. It's just the reroll currency that you're guaranteed is already going to be at least 50 C. Now, also something you will see here is that if you look at the minimap, there's like kind of, you're kind of going to think, what is here, right? So you can't really go further here. Now, thank God this is on the minimap, right? But basically, this means that you can break something open here and actually get into a side area. Now, this is like a cave. So behind there will be 2 to 3 chests. So you can break this open, get another 2 to 3 chests. Usually worth it, right? If it's not too much out of your way. The same thing is here. You can also see this on the minimap. And let's check real quick if I missed something. I think we have it. So let's talk over strategy. So before we get into strats or whatever, I just want to prepare you for basically what is a very knowledge-based part of the game. So I cannot convey you every little detail about this. If you're not somebody who really cares about this, somebody who just wants to blast, you don't really care about the ins and outs, then it's probably just not going to be for you. You can do your logbooks, whatever. I'm going to provide you with a baseline, but most of what you're going to know beyond that is on your own volition, right? You have to go out of your way to get information. You just have to do them. You will see patterns over time. You will get better at it. The first 20 logbooks will probably suck. Like, I started last league, the first 20 logbooks, I had no idea what to do. At some point, I got into a groove. The good thing about logbooks is that they are so rewarding that even if you don't know what you're doing, you're probably going to do fine. But if you want the big monies, you have to actually know what you're doing. And it's very similar to Heist in that way, in that you know how it is. If you just throw in a contract, you have no rogue gear, you have no trinket, you don't really care, right? You don't know what to do, what to open. You're going to make like a fraction of what somebody with a perfect setup would make, right? The same is true for Logbook. There's no rogue gear or whatever like in Heist, but basically knowing where to start, and we're going to talk about just the basics here, is going to be huge. I can only convey you the basics. Everything else is on your own volition, and I hope you have a lot of fun with it, but let's dive into it. Now, people have different approaches to this. Number one, what I will say is that if you look at guides from last league, the first thing people will tell you is screenshot your remnants and look over them if you get duplication. This is what we talked about. Runic monsters are duplicated, can be here, and it's going to be a downside or like sold as a downside, but it's not a downside. It's basically crazy returns because you get double the runic monsters, which will then drop double the reroll currency, which is completely nuts, right? So people used to do this where they go through the whole map. They would even screenshot it, right? And then they would find the remnant and they would go there. What I will say, number one, is that I do not do this anymore. It was worth last league, but it isn't anymore, and I will tell you why. Now, number one is they nerfed a lot of the remnants. Now, some of the remnants used to be crazy. This layout doesn't really have any crazy ones, but there's like Simulacrum Splinter rewards, there's Scarab rewards, which used to be nuts, right? But they got cut in half in terms of rewards, and then Runic monsters are duplicated. This used to be in basically every second map. Now, in the, I think, 200 logbooks that we did in the last week, I think we found it like 4 times or something. So it's nuts. It basically doesn't exist. So going through the whole map and looking at all the remnants will take so much time that you might as well run a logbook more and not do it, right? It's like you don't need to do this to get the most out of it, but you do want to follow some of the rules. Rule number 1, remnants first. That means that you want to pick those swirly things, the remnants we talked about, which give you passive bonuses as fast as possible. The later in the chain they go, the less upside you get. Because if you pop, for example, a 50 quantity one right at the start, all your explosion chains and all the mobs will have that, right? So that's number 1. Remnants are to prioritize first, and chests and other things are kind of your payoff after you get enough remnants. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to like skip these and hope to come back or anything. You're obviously most likely are not going to come back to these mobs, so if you have the chance, you can overlap them, of course. But that basically means that you don't want to look particularly at everything, right? But you want to look at the minimap, where are the most remnants, and then you just plan your course to go there. And you want to have the boss and the underground areas kind of at the end. Now, do note, though, that with some mods that you pick that might be very hard for you to do, maybe the boss might actually brick your run, right? So definitely do watch out. If you have a tough time with single targets, just pick it first, right? You're going to get less rewards, but it's better than no rewards at all or bricking your whole map, right? When I look at this map, the first things I see are the underground areas, the boss, the side areas that I want to break open. They're very conveniently placed up here, I have to say. So this is already a really good logbook. Number 2 that I look at are the blueprint chests. They're the biggest chests to have, and they're up here and down here, also with a currency chest together. Now, all the the faction currencies here are all really, really good if you know what to do with your traders. More to that later. They're also kind of to prioritize. But beyond that, most of the things you want to pick are runic monsters. They give you a ton of reroll currencies. Sometimes you get lucky, sometimes you don't. So basically what I would do here is the following. Since I have both explosive placement range and increased number of explosives, that means that I can probably get around the map as I choose, which is a huge upside, right? So like I said, the implicits also play a part in where you want to drop it. And what I also saw immediately is the quantity of artifacts dropped by monsters. This is actually a very, very good remnant because it also has an upside up here, 50% increased number of magic monsters. Now, when I explain this to you, you might think, oh, this is going to be tedious, right? I'm going to have to think about this every map, right? But you don't, right? You get better and better. You just see this and you just keep placing, and it's going to be very, very fast. You can also always visit me on stream on twitch.tv/Palstron. So what I want to start with here is right here. Now, a little thing on placement, right? For example, if I want to path down here and there's nothing else around this, I want to place it so it's at the very back of my explosive radius, so I can already advance along these lines down here as much as I can. Whereas if I, for example, placed, you can always undo it here, by the way. For example, if I placed it like here, I'm not going further down, right? There's no reason to place it there because here there's nothing really. I could place it there, but usually not worth it, right? So we go as far as we can. And now we have quantity of items dropped by monsters. So we're just going to do this. Now here there's a lot of stuff, so we're just going to take that. Always look if you can actually do these mods. Monsters deal increased damage. Lightning pen, it really doesn't matter. Now this is kind of a trap. There's kind of like you don't really want to go down there because then you have to go up again as well. There's a lot of stuff here as well. So let's go down here. Might as well pick these up as well. Always look to have clever placement where you can get as much as you want. And while you're going up here, you want to also look at these runic monsters. For example, this one is a juicy one, right? Container's rare weapon is kind of a joke, right? Increased rarity. We all know these types of rewards. They're kind of suck, right? Additional currency items actually pretty good. The shock I can kind of bear because I have purity of elements. It doesn't matter. Now, monsters do not grant flash charges. You should usually not take. I will not do it, even if it has like a crazy reward. It's really, really annoying. It depends on your build, I guess. Now, here we want to crack this one open, and we can also get these runic monsters on top, right? No other good things. Currency shards is kind of meh, right? So next up, we want to pick all of these runic monsters here, and we kind of want to advance. We already want to do the underground area now. Then we're going to hit up this. This is also pretty juicy. We proc the boss here. We would like to drop to proc him a little bit later, but it is what it is, right? You have to make do. Now we pick the blueprint chest. This is actually worth it alone because it's just so good. Then we break open the second thing. Can we actually break open both this and the underground area? We actually can. So if you place it correctly, you can break both open, and now you have more flexibility going down here. Jewelry, rare. So now we're at a point where when we break open remnants, it gives us the downside, but we don't really get much, right? We only have 7 explosives left. So for example, if I now went for runic monsters have additional jewelry, only the last few explosions would have that. So at this point, remnants are kind of worthless. So we go down here, and then we go down here, and now we have kind of our payoff with the blueprint thingy. Nothing here is really interesting anymore. The remnants don't really matter as much. We're also going to pick up the, you can't really see it here, but it's a map one, right? And then we end somewhere here, and we're just gonna write it out right here. And then at the end, it doesn't really matter. Let's just put it here. After you place your explosives, before you start, and this is very important, you want to hover over this here. This shows you all the detrimental mods and all the upsides that you got throughout the run with your remnants, right? So if you see here, for example, you missed out something, maybe you misplaced it and you caught onto a immune to cold and you're a cold build, you don't want to brick your run. Always look at this before you do, and it will show here. And if you see, oh, somewhere I picked up immune to cold, you can always undo placement, and you can do this as much as you want. You can undo everything you want. Also, something I want to say is that if you happen to get the mod runic monsters are duplicated, if you happen to see it somewhere, it is actually worth it to redo your whole run and then focus around that remnant. So for example, if you didn't see it, right, but throughout exploring, at the end you saw, oh, this says runic monsters are duplicated. You wanna redo your whole run and go for this immediately, and then just pick up every runic monster you find. You will get so many returns. It's way better than anything I can do here. It's a completely broken one, so that's why they made it so rare. Like I said, it's not worth checking for it. You're gonna save way more time. You almost never gonna find that one anyway. But if you do, redo your run accordingly. But all that's left to do now is actually do the run. So let's start it right now. We're actually gonna have a boss, which is this boss in here is actually one that you have to go underground for. So it's kind of a boss fight. I can show it to you real quick. So all you do here is you pop these open, you kill the boss, you kill the mobs, right? You open the chests, you can just do this. Now you kind of want to follow the explosion chain. Now, one thing that can happen, right, which is if you take too much time looting, the mobs might actually off-screen you, because there's certain archers in this map that will shoot at you off-screen. They kind of nerfed them, but they still kind of do that, right? So maybe you want to loot at the end if you're very squishy build. Otherwise, they might just, I don't know, shoot at you from off screen, which might be very annoying. As you can see here, this is like the cavern, so we can open this, right? This is the side area that we opened. Here is the boss. This is the first underground area, Spectral Hollow. Yeah, we can go down there in a second. Basically, the boss area is now popped open. This is the runic stronghold. This is one of the bosses. You can go down there, and every remnant will be applied to the boss. So if you put some really harsh remnants there, you might actually break the boss. They're no joke. This is the second underground area that we got. Oh, we got an Exalt. That's really lucky. Now, next one is the Chittering Chamber. We're also going to go down there at the end. But let's first loot everything up top. And down here we have the blueprint one again. We did hit the blueprint. That's very nice. Usually worth monies. Blueprints and contracts are also one of the reasons why you want to have high-level high-level logbooks, right? Because those will give you high-level contracts and blueprints, which is what the heisters are looking for, right? So now we're basically at the end. Now, one thing I'm going to mention is that artifacts are not pickups anymore as they were last league. So a lot of the upsides that we got, you haven't even seen in this inventory. All the vendor currency that we're going to spend later on the traders that are going to give us returns. So there is this thing where a lot of people would think they didn't get much back from the logbook, when in reality, they just picked up a ton of artifacts. And I will show you what I mean by that. So for example, you can see the swirly thing. This is a currency chest. Nothing from this will drop but currency. So if I do this, lesser, common, you can see it right here. And these can be turned into DANNIG in this case to get new stuff. So this could be another logbook or whatever. So yeah, do not underestimate what you actually get from these logbooks. I know it's very deceptive, but let's go down to the underground areas and to the boss. All right, so first the underground areas. There's different tiles here, right? You come in, there's some runic monsters, there's some normal mobs, and you just pop them. And there's like 2 chests, for example, here, right? I don't know what I did. I don't know why I did no damage there, but it's fine, right? This was a currency chest again. Nothing dropped. But in reality, a lot of artifacts dropped, right? Before we go down to the boss, let's go to the second mini area here real quick. This is a Chittering Chamber. This, you can only click the eggs or whatever after you killed the mob. So you just go here, you kill all the mobs. And after that, you can open your rewards. These are basically just different tile sets. Depending on the tile sets, you'll have to do different things. And then you take this, you open this, boom, boom. And you see all of these are artifacts that you get. So it's very deceptive in a way where you think, oh, I'm actually getting rewards, but you actually do. So let's do the boss fight real quick. I'm going to make this a little bit faster because obviously I can't be bothered to give you like a 5-minute boss fight or whatever. So we're now at the end of the boss. Let's actually see if we can do him without dying, because his third phase is a little rough. But basically, once he's done, you will see now he dropped us 18 burial medallions. Now, these are kind of like random. He can also drop uniques, right? I think he drops this unique, which I actually hide. But we just dropped 18 of these just from the boss, and one of them is 7 chaos currently. So yeah, that's like 130 chaos whenever you get a boss, which is crazy. Logbooks, these kind of logbooks right now go for like 50C. So it's completely outrageous. The chance that you get a boss, in my experience, is like, I don't know, 1 in 6, 1 in 7, or whatever. It's definitely a huge upside, and if you never get a boss, don't be discouraged. It's completely RNG. But yeah, this is basically a logbook. All right, so now let's go over all the vendors and how you actually extract currency from them. Number one, I will say right now, I have no idea how to make good currency with ROG. Usually it's just a waste of time. This is actually a lot better in week one when people don't have much gear. You can actually make good rare gear here. Other than that, there's certain specific stats that you would have to learn a lot about crafting for to actually make it work. I usually don't do his logbooks all that much. These are just from random maps. But as you know, you can just not choose him. He's Order of the Chalice. Just never choose Order of the Chalice. Or if you love crafting, maybe you can even focus him if you want to, but make sure that you have some kind of strat. I don't have one for you here. I think he's by far the worst trader. Now, the second vendor and my personal favorite, and probably your personal favorite too as well very soon, is going to be TUJEN, and you can haggle with him as much as you want. I will just show you a little bit of my tricks that I learned with him. Now, number one is speed is key. You will get a lot of these exotic coinages if you do a lot of logbooks, so you don't want to sit here and like think, so should I buy this sacrifice at dawn for 104? Where do we go with this currency? You're wasting your time, basically. What you want to do is you want to do something like this, right? This is what you want to do. Now, don't buy anything. This was just an example, but I will tell you what I'm buying specifically and a little bit of a strat to kind of use all your currencies even. The reason to kind of even out your spending on currency is that you cannot actually buy these. So if you have too little of Greater Black Scythes, if you were in Expedition League last league, you can actually trade these with other players. They're not tradable anymore. So if you run out of a certain currency, you also can't really reroll, because if there's like an Exalt here and it costs like this and you don't have the currency anymore, well, you're kind of screwed. So you kind of want to even it out while rolling, which is why, for example, if I had like 50,000 of this still here and not as many of these, everything that costs lessers, I would be more inclined to buy than if it was like commons, right? So you kind of just have to go with the flow here, but I will give you some tricks here. So number one, the order in which these items appear is always going to be the biggest currency, the Grand Black Scythe, which is the most rare one. Everything that costs Grand Black Scythes will be at the top here, going down to Graders, for example. So there's going to be very little item that actually costs Grand Black Scythe, but if you ever find a Mirror Shard or a Mirror or an Exalt or a stack of Exalts or Cortexes, usually they cost Grand Blacks. So going down the list, next up are Greater Black Scythes. These are the next rarest currency, and you can see them here. This one costs this, so if I buy this, for example, I just paid this currency. Going down, you will see Common is next down in line, and then the rest will all be lesser Black Scythe artifact. Now, the prices that TUJEN has can completely vary, but you don't want to hover over all of them, of course. So what you want to do is kind of just go with the flow as well. You don't want to waste too much time. But what I can tell you, I'm just going to go through this and just tell you a few things that are basically always worth. For example, Sextants, worth it, right? Scourings, it depends on the stack size, right? You kind of just have to get in the groove. It's very hard to tell what's actually worth because you cannot quantify these in currency because they're not on the market, right? So it's kind of like up to you what you prefer, right? Kind of just even it out. Sometimes you're going to get a big payoff like an Exalt, like a Cortex, like an Enlighten or whatever, but a lot of your money will just come from small currency, stack decks, and whatnot. So like I said, what I do and what is going to be the most time saver is you can actually do this with mouse scroll wheel. So what you do is you just click on an item and you do this immediately. Boom. Click on an item, do this, right? Boom. And so forth. I wouldn't buy these items, but yeah. What you want to avoid is that you actually have to haggle more and more and then just click and click. You don't want to be too annoyed by this. At least that's how I do it. If you're more, if you don't really care about that kind of stuff, it's fine as well. You can haggle with him if you want, but it's going to be kind of a waste of time. We're just talking about a few vols here, right? Now, a lot of your money will also come from Scarabs, for example. So let's just go through some inventories. A lot of small currencies usually worth it. Rogue markers, sometimes they're worth it, sometimes they aren't, right? You're gonna make mistakes if you do it fast. It is what it is. Now, one trick I will also tell you is that gems are usually not worth hovering over unless it's obviously Empower or Enlighten, right? But if the gems are up top and they actually cost this currency, they might be at 2120. So the further up you see gems, the more it's worth to actually hover over them. Also a small little thing, right? So let's just go through this. Now, a lot of fossils are actually worth it, and this one is as well. One thing I will also say is that I have kind of a screwed up ratio here right now, but most of you will have way more lesser Black Scythes than anything else. So what that means is that everything that is down here is usually just worth it. It just has to be worth a click, right? And then you can just buy it, you reroll, you get a stacked deck. In this case, we didn't really get a payoff, so let's just roll a little bit more. Okay, some more stacked decks, and you just go on and on and on. You just get more and more rewards. At some point, you're going to hit like Exalted shards. You're going to hit Exalteds. Something big to pay off, but yeah, that's basically TUJEN. Now, next gambler is GWENNEN. Now, this is the gambler with the highest upside, but also the highest downside. The downside being that realistically, you're never going to get anything from her. But if you do, it could be an item that's like 100, 200, 300 exalts, right? You could hit a Mageblood. You could hit a Headhunter. But in reality, it's probably not going to happen. Just for reference, I gambled through like 2,700 of these, and I got like, I don't know, like 2x in items in return. And if I would have sold them, that's like 40x or whatever, right? So it's just a huge gamble. If you get lucky, you get lucky. If you don't, you don't. Whether you want to sell this reroll currency, I will leave up to you. Since I like streaming highlights and stuff, I usually do them. But if you want to make steady currency, just sell them to other people. They actually go for like 2 chaos each in bulk. But what I will tell you is there's actually a website that can help you get like a search down here, right? Because it can be very annoying to know which bases to go for, and you can put in your regex here. And this tool helps you with that because you can select whatever you want here. Now, if you visit this website, usually everything's going to be checked, so you only have to uncheck just in case. I just want to roll for the big boys, right? I don't really care for these small fries. But if you want to roll for currency, definitely include some of the other ones as well. Let's just say that we only want to gamble for belts. Let's just say we only want to gamble for Headhunter and for our boy Mageblood, right? Then we just tick this and this. And once we click generate string, we just now have to copy this. And now we put it here. And now it's only going to show heavy belts and leather belts. So once we reroll, I think we also have Elegant Round Shield ticked, right? Squire as well. Yeah, Squire is in there as well. So we have 3 things to gamble for. Boom. This can be whatever. Usually it's going to be nothing. You just roll, roll, roll. There's a leather belt. Boom. You go through this forever. Yeah, nothing happened, right? And the more you have, you can just roll this forever. Sometimes you're going to hit it. Sometimes you won't. It is what it is. Personally, this is a huge gamble. If you love gambling, you're going to love her. You might get crippling depression, but you might also get the big hit, so it's up to you. Also, obviously, I'm going to link this down in the description, so just look there, and you can start your gambling session. And last, but definitely not least, is DANNIG. Now, his thing is basically he exchanges currency. So if you hover over this, if you would reroll, these would always stay the same. These are always here. So this is every single currency of all the other traders. You can see here cost per unit 1. All of these currencies can be 1-to-1 translated into whatever other currency you want, which is obviously very, very nice, but usually not what you want to do. What you want to do is you want to buy the kind of bargains down here. Now, what I mean by that is that if you hover over this one, for example, it says cost per unit 0.5, right? If I buy it up here, for example, if I buy 10 up here, I would pay 10 of his currency. But with the bargain, and these refresh with the rerolls, it says I can buy up to 981 for half the cost, which is a bargain, right? And I would like to buy it. You just control click it, or you can also click on it and say how many of them you want exchanged, right? And usually in terms of reroll currency, I always buy exotic coinage. I do buy Astragalis, and Rogue's currency, scrap metals, are not really worth anything, so don't buy them. It obviously also depends on what kind of currency you have, if you can't even buy it. Be sure that you don't convert too much, so you actually have currency to buy, like logbooks, for example. I'm going to reroll a few times here, but basically I would just take this. If I don't need currency, I just do this. And here we have, for example, a logbook. Now, this logbook only has raw currency, which is actually trash. This would probably only sell for like 30C or 35C, but it still is a logbook, right? And yeah, you kind of get these. So that's basically where your payoff is. That's what I'm saying, right? So get all of these, just reroll, get this, reroll, get this. Sometimes you're going to hit a logbook, like I said, nothing here. Now, maybe I want this currency, right? Maybe I want like this. I don't know. Whatever you prefer, but this is kind of how he goes. There's not really much more to it. So just balance out your currencies depending on which other kinds of traders you would like to use and exchange the currencies depending on that. Now, this last section is just as a warning. If you do not want to engage with the vendors, you're not going to get much out of your logbooks. A lot of the rewards have been shifted from, like, there were crazy remnants last week, right? You could get a ton of scarabs, you could get a ton of simulacrum splinters, so you wouldn't even have to interact much with the vendors. But now the vendors are actually crucial to how much money you make. So definitely use at least TUJEN and DANNIG. The other two are like up to you, right? But definitely use these two. If you are selling your TUJEN rerolls and you're not actually haggling, if you have the currency for it, which you cannot sell, right? These are just wasted if you don't use them. And on average, you're going to make a ton more if you roll here and you kind of know what you're doing. You're going to get so much small currency. It might not seem like much while you buy it, but in the end, if you open like your stash tab, for example, like I did after my farming session, and you go here and you have like these amounts of fossils, you're like, what the hell? How did I get 45 bound fossils, right? You stuff like that. You don't even realize while you're buying it how much you get. I mean, just look at how many stacked decks I have. I probably have around 6,000 stacked decks just from my farming session here, right? Like if I look at this, most of these are just from TUJEN, right? So do not underestimate the currency that you don't see while doing logbooks. They will pay off if you know how to use the vendors. But I hope overall this guy helped you out and you have a lot of fun with logbooks, and see you next time. But that's it for the video. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't already, subscribe. And as always, a huge thank you to all my Twitch subscribers and Patreons. You're making videos like this possible, so thank you very much for the support. But yeah, I've had a total blast doing basically nothing but logbooks for the last few days. Now I have to sell everything. It's going to be quite a pain in the ass, but we're going to make a ton of exalts, so it's going to be fun. And yeah, I would basically recommend logbooks to everybody. Just try it at least. It is kind of like heist or delve in that you want to specialize in it if you want to really get the most out of it. But even if you just want to run your own logbooks, I think this video would help you out a ton, and I hope it did help you out a ton. But yeah, with that being said, since I still don't have a slogan, see you next time.